Welcome, everybody. Good morning to all of you that are joining us live here today. And I know some of you will still be trickling in. And then for all of you that are watching or listening later, I'm here with Danny.
Hi, everybody. Good to see you.
And I was telling the group before we started the recording is that Colleen is actually on vacation. And I talked to her this morning and she is actually vacationing. She said she's relaxing. She's on a trip with my brother and for my niece's high school graduation trip, she's in Puerto Vallarta, Mexico, and said that she is having a great time and actually having some relaxing time. I was saying that she usually takes very active vacations or there are like work trips that are combined with the vacation. So it was nice to hear that she is doing that. Um, oh yes, thank you, Danny. We do, for those of you that are here live, we actually have our Q&A, our live Q&A tomorrow. And that is at 9 a.m. Pacific. If you're signed up for this link, then you'll get the link to that as well. That is just the format where we can go and ask Reiki questions. If you are listening later, we do that once a month. So you can always go to our Reiki lifestyle calendar and look at the dates for that. The dates do shift around because of teaching and traveling and things like that. So they shift around. Um, so yeah, that's always a really fun format. And we have a live audience there and we talk about Reiki things and take your questions from social and things like that. So we would love to have you join us, whether it's this month or a date in the future. It's always a fun conversation. Also, one other two announcements. One is that we are teaching in person next week for Animal Reiki, Colleen and myself and Sue Strong. The 1 and 2 class is full, but we do have a few spots left in our Animal Reiki master class. So if you're called to join us, it's going to be just an amazing experience, a beautiful experience. And so we would love to have you join us. You do have to be a human Reiki master and have taken Animal Reiki 1 and 2 to have taken that class. But it's going to be pretty magical. So if it's kind of like me, should I do it or not do it? I would highly encourage you to do it. It's going to be so fun. And then the other announcement that I want to make is that Colleen is teaching Karuna Reiki next month. And I want to make that announcement because she only teaches Karuna Reiki a few times a year. And this is the last one of the year, right, Danny? Yeah, it's online. Do you have the dates up? Do you want to just?
It's in August. I don't have it.
Okay, that's okay. It's online. She's teaching, the next one she's teaching is in February of next year. So we always like to make sure that people know that that class is happening because it's not super often. So Danny's pulling the dates up. It's like mid-August, what, like the 15th, 16th, 17th, somewhere in there. Yeah. All right. She'll get the dates up. I think that's all the announcements. So anyway, I'll go ahead and stop there with it, but just like to let people know what we're up to. Okay, so this month we are continuing to talk about teaching and teaching Reiki. I know, again, we've said this, that not everybody's called to teach Reiki. You're still going to find different nuggets in here of things about your Reiki path. The other thing is that there's a lot of things that are applicable to you if you just take out the word teaching and some of the work that we are doing. So, for example, today we are going to be talking about your more of your vision. So last week was practical. This week we're going into, again, more of that larger picture, energetic picture of who you are as a Reiki teacher. Next week and the week after are back to more of the practical things. So today, if we're talking about, what is my vision of myself as a Reiki teacher? You could ask that question of what is my vision of myself as a Reiki practitioner or of my Reiki path? And if you just kind of shift the language in those questions, the questions are still always relevant. They're relevant in the beginning, they're relevant now. 10 years into this as a professional, actually 11, 11 years as a professional, Colleen now almost 30 years as a professional. These questions are always going to be relevant because things ebb and flow. Your practice, your business always ebbs and flows. And so it's a good idea to come back to these questions from time to time. Are things the same? Are things changing? Do you have a vision as you're moving forward as a practitioner, as a teacher, and just in your Reiki practice, in your Reiki path in general? So, again, feel comfortable if you're curious or have some of these questions that are right there for you, and you just want to shift out the language of them. Because one of the things about Reiki energy, one of the things about having a Reiki business is that there is the energy behind all of it. There are the practical aspects that you need to have a Reiki business, whether you're a teacher, whether you're a practitioner. But the energy is here to help you. And this is one of the things that, and actually, we're talking about this in our Next Step Reiki classes right now, that Reiki can be used very practically, and it can also be used very spiritually, and it can also be used, physically, mentally, emotional as well. And so when we might be trying to clarify our path, when we might be trying to clarify our purpose or our vision, this is where you can also ask Reiki. And even as experienced people, sometimes we forget. Like we were doing something not too long ago and trying to answer a question as a part of our business aspect, Colleen and I was like, well, why don't we just go into a Reiki journey about it? We're like, oh yeah, duh. So sometimes we do forget that that is a part of what Reiki can help us do. Come to our clarity, quiet the outside noise, and help us align on that path that is meant for us. So that's what we're talking about today, the guided journey that we're doing today. Next week, Danny is going to be hosting the Reiki Share, and she is going to be talking about how to hold a Reiki Share, whether that is online or whether that is in person. It is something that she has done in a lot of different ways, and that is a really good way to help you build community. It's a really good way to help you to even market your services. It's a good way to hold space for people to come together to be able to experience, share, give Reiki, all of those things. And there's so many different ways to do that, so many different styles of doing that. So we're excited about that. Colleen and I will be teaching next week. So Danny will be facilitating the distance Reiki share. And then the week after that, we're going to go into more of the business aspect of it. And we'll talk about it then also. So for today, with the topic today, this is an important topic to talk about, your vision. Part of what we'll be doing in the journey is we will be talking about like why we talked in the first one, are you ready to teach Reiki? So you can go back and listen to that. But this is one of those things of like, okay, what is my true purpose in becoming a Reiki teacher? Like finding that North Star, finding that anchor point to help you to come back to. Um, Also, sometimes we might be feeling called to teach Reiki, but then we are like, when we really get down to it, maybe we're just content on focusing on your personal practice, and that pull that can be either way. And so going into the energy is another place that can be very helpful in that clarity. And then also, what's the motivation behind this? Is it a personal motivation or a professional or a spiritual motivation? Where is that pull or that calling for you coming from? So then the places where Reiki can help us, because I know for me, I have a lot of different sides to me, right? We're all multidimensional people, so that's true for everybody. So what kind of Reiki teacher do I wish to be? That is a place where I know for me, I can have the practical side to me where I like a PowerPoint. I like it very A, B, and C. Um, I also have the channeling side to me where it's that spiritual, that really big in-depth questions that I like to explore. What's the meaning of life? What's the when we're like in our 12 heavens exploration, what is the meaning of this heaven? What's that meta viewpoint? Exploring consciousness. And so I have that really other side to me that's very spiritual. I have a part of me that is, and this when it's like comes to design and things like that. And everybody is like this. I'm just using these as examples, but I have that part of me that likes an edginess to it, even a little bit of a rebellious spirit. And so when you have all of these different aspects to yourself, you can think of, even though I might not bring that into teaching, I know that I might have this part of me that is very like going by an outline, going by this PowerPoint exactly in the linear way, that kind of more academic version. You look at like Colleen, and while she does go in the manual and covers all the material, she might be a little bit more circular around that. I see that and the benefit of all of the ways that she teaches in that way. And I think, okay, can I be more like that? How do I be more like that? So when you have all of these different sides to yourselves and all of these different, even, like, okay, well, I'm this way, but maybe I wish I was a little more this way, those desires and those different pieces to ourselves. How do we either bring all of those into one piece or kind of in this, especially when you're first starting teaching, like, okay, well, where do I just start? Am I most comfortable here? Where do I just start? Because that is one of the places that can be the hardest. Of also, I see other people that teach and they're so experienced, and maybe I'm not exactly like that. And I'm not exactly like Colleen. And that's one of been my biggest lessons, right? Is that who I am speaks to certain people. Also, who she is speaks to certain people. And so that voice and that style is one of those things that we develop over time and we really settle into who we are over time. And that's a beautiful thing. But when we're starting out, that comparison, that those millions of different visions or versions of ourselves that we have, it's like, okay, well, how do we actually take that and put that into what kind of Reiki teacher um, on who I want, on who do I wish to be? And there's a for every um teacher, there are students, there are people that need your voice. There's people that are attracted to what kind of teacher you might be. So if I think about it in terms of an easy example, we have people that come to Reiki because they are searching for that spiritual aspect of it. And then there's people that come to Reiki because they want to volunteer in a medical setting, or they've had an experience with Reiki that has helped them with their chronic pain when nothing else has. And so they have a very either medical or scientific interest in Reiki. And then you have the people that it has been helped them through a really challenging emotional or spiritual aspect of their life. And so Reiki, so they are looking for that really deep version of Reiki. And so if you're looking to teach, how do you know, wade through that? How do you also let people know what kind of Reiki teacher you are? This is where these reflection questions, this is where when we go into the energy, it helps you to clarify that path. It helps you to clarify your vision of that. Also, what levels of Reiki do I feel called to teach? I actually had a DM about this answer about this question recently, and I had somebody ask, if somebody is a Reiki one, can they just be attuned to the master level? And the reason why they'd never taught before, and the reason why they were asking for that question is because they were going to go into a yoga studio. And so I told them, in our lineage, which they were of our lineage, they need to be Reiki level 1, Reiki level 2, and then wait 6 months to take the master class. And I was like, well, why do you want to teach them, just go straight into the ignition of the master class? And so it was just a clarity and clarifying question around that of like, well, if you're going to practice teaching, don't go straight to master. Teach Reiki level 1 and 2, because that helps get that those feet underneath you with it. It takes a bit of pressure off. I mean, I think anytime we first teach our first few classes, we feel pressure. That's just normal, and that's okay. Um, and and so we're always going to feel that pressure. And I said, well, I think where you might want to start, and you could start at the master level for people who are already Reiki 1 and 2, if you feel called to that. There's nothing wrong with that. And in our lineage, other lineages have different uh, recommendations. And I said, I think what would be easiest when you're going into this yoga studio is just start with a Reiki 1 and 2 class. She can take the Reiki 1 and 2. She can get her level 2 and get the symbols and all of those kinds of things, which can be super helpful, even if they've been practicing Reiki level 1 for a while. It does level you up. That will help you, kind of start with that, getting your feet underneath you with it. And she was like, oh, that is really helpful. Maybe I'll just teach a few Reiki 1 and 2 classes first, and also build up those Reiki 1 and 2 students in that kind of community, in that as your base. Because in our lineage, and most lineages, you're going to go Reiki level 1, Reiki level 2, and then Reiki level 3, Reiki master. And that time frame in between varies. Some lineages, it's even, recommended that they wait years until they do Reiki level 3 or Reiki master. And so when you're kind of starting out in your community, if there's not a lot of Reiki practitioners, Reiki level 2, you're going to want to start with Reiki level 1 and 2 classes with it. Now, some of us are called to teach the teachers, but you also have to start somewhere when you're practicing. And I do think that it's like, oh, okay, I can just start with Reiki level 1, or I can just start with Reiki level 1 and 2. And so that can be really helpful in clarifying that. But if you are called, like, oh, I really want to teach the teachers, I really want to teach the master students, I really want to teach Karuna, then you would have to reach into places where you already have people who are Reiki level 2 or Reiki master if you want to teach Karuna. So there is going to be a part of this is going to define itself for you a little bit. I think most people feel comfortable starting off teaching Reiki level 1 and 2 at first, so that they can, get their teacher skills um, built up, and so that they can also have this base of people that then can take the Reiki master, then take the Reiki, then take Karuna student or Karuna. Um, so that is sometimes self-clarifying. Other times, if you live in a large place where there's a lot of people attuned to Reiki, Portland, large cities, LA, New York, they're more common in a lot of these places, or like a place like Sedona. It's not a large city, but it's a place that is a spiritual mecca. So, kind of everybody knows what Reiki is. Lots of people are attuned to it, things like that. Sorry, let me change those settings. There we go. Then that's a little bit different. You could potentially start off at the master level, but in a lot of places that aren't that kind of thing, then you are going to have to train the Reiki practitioners before you can train the Reiki masters. Also, who are the students that I feel called to serve? And to me, that is a question of like, who is my ideal client? So we went through this when we were talking about it with the Reiki practitioners. And that might be a similar client, or that might be a different client. And as far as like who is the students that I'm looking for? What is my voice as a teacher? And how do I reach them, which we're going to be coming back to in a couple of weeks, more of the practical aspects of the marketing and things like that. But this is another place that you can ask Reiki for. And Colleen wrote an article a while ago. It is, I think it's Reiki business techniques. Is that the one she wrote with Karen Danny? And in that article, there is exercises and questions about finding your ideal client. That's something also, there is a lot of information online about who your ideal client is, because that's like a term. You would Google who my ideal client is, and there's going to be prompts or questions that are going to help you to find that. And this is true for students. So just put in the word students instead of clients and allow Reiki to help you come to that clarity around it. Sometimes those answers when you're in Reiki are going to be different than when we're in our ordinary minds, because Reiki sees things that we don't see. Reiki knows things that we don't know about our path. Our future selves, our higher selves know things, and sometimes that's what's coming through the Reiki energy, knows things that we may not see in this moment in time. But going through that work, going through those steps can be super helpful when we're in Reiki, because sometimes that's another place that feels like it's a lot to wade through and a lot to find clarity around. So, with this, I kind of gave that example of how you might have different versions of this. It might be people who are wanting to volunteer. It might be people who are seeking um, the spiritual parts of Reiki. Might be people who are in the scientific fields and you are looking to help Reiki have more awareness and research behind it to help it in general, as far as like a mainstream practice. You also might be called to work with families or, parents or mothers. That might be another place. People who are in chronic pain, maybe it helped you with that, or an autoimmune issue that might have been a part of your journey, and it helped you so much that that is who you are looking to also help. Because being a practitioner and being helping people through Reiki sessions is very, very helpful. When you are able to teach people to have Reiki for themselves in that uh, attunement process, also is very helpful. And being able to do self Reiki, things like that, is very helpful. And it does take our Reiki to another level when we are initiated or attuned to Reiki. So that is why so many people feel called to teach, because it's like, oh, okay, I can get sessions. And, I mean, we're practitioners, so we know sessions are super, super helpful and can be life changing for people. And not everybody is called to also, become a Reiki level 1 or Reiki level 2 or 3 or Karuna. But at the same time, that is a place where you might even have a recommendation for a client or a long-term client. It's like, hey, I know these sessions are super helpful, but if you have any inclination that you might want to be to receive your Reiki attunements, I do think it would feel really helpful for you for a variety of different ways, for a variety of different reasons. So that ideal client, those ideal students, those that are out there waiting for your voice, when the student is ready, the teacher appears, or when the teacher is ready, the student appears. Um, you are going to want to be clarifying that within your practice and within your marketing, within who you're looking for. Because when you're trying to go for all of the above, that's when it can feel a little overwhelming. If I'm trying to appeal, if my messaging is trying to appeal to the medical field, if it's appealing to the spiritual field, if it's appealing to the autoimmune field, if it's appealing to the people who are using it for parenting or managing that level of managing that kind of thing, personal life stuff. Maybe it's just for you in business, in like your corporate job, for people who are in their corporate job. There's so many different avenues that Reiki helps with people that can feel overwhelming in your messaging at first. Maybe down the road you're able to add in more people, and it's not to say that your classes or your students aren't, you know, across the board with things. I know for us, we have that. But sometimes when you're in your messaging in the beginning, when it's that many different options, that can feel overwhelming. And so if you can help clarify your path at first, that also helps you in your messaging. Like, oh, okay, if I am just trying to attract students who are wanting to volunteer at a hospital. Okay, so now all of a sudden I am going to a hospital, and I am, bringing the materials that I need to help, help in my voice with like appealing to nurses, for example, or their volunteer coordinator, things like that. When on my social media, it's like, okay, here's my why, problem, solution. You're feeling called to volunteer at the hospital, or you're a nurse who is working there who you just want Reiki for yourself. Those kinds of things, that it's going to be one message and one version of how Reiki can help support that person and why they might want to learn, versus somebody who's using it for their exploration of consciousness and the very spiritual side that Reiki offers. Those are, it's not that there's not overlap. I don't mean it that way, but those are two kind of different versions of messaging, right? And so that can feel like a lot, and it can feel all over the place when you're in the beginning. And so helping you narrow down your path in the beginning can be very, very helpful. And then you can branch out after a little while, kind of once you get that first initial wave of who you're looking for and what part of Reiki you're trying to um, appeal to within that. Also, is there any specialized group? So like animal Reiki, for example. I know Danny is so called to teach animal Reiki, that is one of the things that she is that's a part of her aspect, is in, she's in Eugene, so does teaching animal Reiki there, for example. So that might be another piece of who you want to be as a teacher. Like, I really am just called to work so much with animal Reiki that I want to teach more animal Reiki practitioners. Again, that's going to help you with your messaging. Do you want to teach beginners? Like, I just wanted people to have Reiki 1 and just to be able to support themselves in their situation, give Reiki. I'm so called to just teach Reiki 1 or Reiki 1 and 2. Or are you looking to teach advanced practitioners, or people who are really wanting to move into teaching with it? So there's also that clarity with it. The other place that Reiki helps us to explore, and that is a part of our um, teaching path, is exploring our unique gifts, life experiences. I kind of talked about that. So many of us come to Reiki for different reasons. Let's say you have used it to help you through health issues, or um, helping you support, maintain, manage. Some people have even healed themselves from um, autoimmune diseases. You hear that in Reiki and spiritual modalities a lot. People who have managed their Lyme, for example, through Reiki energy and the different things that it lines up for us. I know for me, like, I've had a near death experience that's a unique gift that I can talk about with Reiki energy and how it can help support us through it. So, and the things that brought me in my life, and the gifts that brought me in my life. And so we all have these different places that called us to Reiki, or Reiki called us to it through those things. And those are a part of your gifts. Or maybe you have other kinds of gifts, like You see through the veils, right? And maybe you have your entire life, or you have psychic uh, gifts, and Reiki has helped you to manage those or to understand them to a greater degree. There's other people out there that have those things. And so, are those the people that you are looking for, or that are looking for you to help them through that? So, that's another place that these kinds of questions, it's not about being like somebody else. Like, these kinds of questions help us to define our practice as teachers, as practitioners. But because we're exploring it as teachers, you can talk about those things in your classes. Reiki's not just A, B, and C. We talk about the different experiences that we have in life and how Reiki has helped us. Or if, let's say, you are teaching people who are volunteering or nurses or in the medical or scientific fields, here are the things that are helpful for you to know. Um, that here's ways that you can talk about Reiki in your work. If you're in corporate, here are ways that you can talk about Reiki in your work. That is going to be different than the things that we're going to talk about when we're talking about managing our psychic gifts or seeing through the veils. We're not talking about that in hospitals, right? We're not talking about those when we're talking about volunteer programs, or talking about that with in our, broad reaching nurses. Generally talking to nurses, not to say that there's not a nurse that has that gift that may talk to you about it, but that's not like our general messaging with it. Those are going to be two different things. And you have those gifts in those places. And so it's also helping you to find your voice as a teacher. And what does that look like? And that's not always the easiest thing to define, especially when there's so many options and so many different opportunities. You might have come from a different modality and found Reiki through the other modality, or you're a Reiki practitioner, Reiki teacher that is interested in other modalities. So things like shamanism, things like sound healing, meditation, breath work. We have so many different things that we we combine Reiki with. That is such a great part about it, is that we can use it in our other practices. I talked about yoga initially. That's another place where we might integrate Reiki with it or talk about Reiki with it. And so, how do you do that? How do you use that? How do you use those two things together? And how do you integrate them together? So, the questions that you might ask yourself, and like, again, we're going to have a guided journey around this to help you and be in the Reiki energy. Like, would I want to blend Reiki with my other practices? Do I want to keep teaching purely Reiki? Because I know people that do that as well. Like, they might be an expert in crystals, and they might also teach Reiki. And there are also some lineages that do ask you to keep Reiki separate from those, other modalities. And there's other modalities that ask you to not um, blend other things with it. So do you keep them separate or do you blend them? And also honoring the different traditions in the different practices that you might be trained in. And so there's that clarifying aspect as well, too. So there's all of these different visions of Reiki that we might have, that that we have our like teaching style reflect your gifts, your talents, your trainings, your personalities, your vision of who you are, who you want to teach, your spiritual path, your Reiki path. And this is where we use Reiki to help us clarify in the beginning and down the road, because our lives change, who we are changes. When we're in these spiritual modalities, we might take other trainings, different aspects might call to us. Um, within spiritual modalities. Maybe you started off as just a Reiki teacher, but somewhere along the line, sound healing called to you, or astrology called to you. And so you took trainings in those kinds of things. But now we have these different things. So, how do we blend them together? When I started off with Reiki, well, I was a teenager, but when I started off professionally as a Reiki practitioner, I didn't have a child. Right now, I'm a mother of an 8.5-year-old. So that changes who I am as a person. And so it is helpful to come back to these anchor points, these questions. Life can get confusing sometimes. Our Reiki practice changes, the world changes. And so this is, again, it is when you're in the beginning, but also when you're in the middle of it, as well. And so that's what we're going to be doing in the Reiki journey today, is helping us to go into some of these questions. And again, if you're not called to be a Reiki teacher, you can just insert other language into it, things that you are exploring, things that you are asking about right now, that can be helpful to you. All right. Anything else, Danny? No. Okay. So, for those of you that are listening later here in the live, we're going to go into the journey. So, for all of you that are here, you can go ahead and get comfortable. We are going to have opportunities for automatic writing. And I'm going to say that again in the journey, because some people on the recordings only listen to the journeys. So, but yeah, go ahead and get comfortable.